Okay, everybody, I'm just going to share my screen and we can go into the middle of things here. Mhm. Please, can you give me a confirmation that you're seeing the screen? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Then just going to go ahead with it. So welcome back to the Sondermodul AI and Architecture from Foundations to Post-Human Speculations. And we're going to start with a couple of quite fundamental questions. And this is basically going to be the vast majority of the lecture today. The first question is, what is artificial intelligence? For this, I have a little task here now. Can any one of you tell me what he thinks artificial intelligence is? Anyone? Again, remember what I said before. There is, well, actually, I was asking the question. So let me know something. Anybody?
Advanced algorithms.
It's a little part of it. Any other ideas what it could be?
Is it like a self-learning, like a fake brain?
Learning is a part of it, yes. Anything else?
Any machine that augments human capabilities. I mean, 100 years ago, calculators was a AI,
I think I would say that all answers are right and wrong at the same time. And this is what makes the AI, I think, quite interesting. Let me continue with this, and maybe we can clarify a little bit where the mysteries of artificial intelligence actually lies. So if you think about AI, there is nothing like the AI. It's a whole collection of different models, ideas, concepts, algorithms, yeah, that fulfill a variety of different tasks. And they're all subsumized under the subtitle artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is basically an umbrella term, a term that you put on top of a variety of different things just to get them somehow named. And they can be roughly subdivided into machine learning, natural language processing, speech processing, and vision processing. So, for example, all the things that you see about automated cars that can recognize pedestrians and get out, try to avoid collisions with them, that's all vision, yeah? Machine vision. Machine learning would be, for example, a convolutional neural network that can recognize numbers that you're writing on a check. Or, for example, that filters your email to figure out what is spam and what is not spam. It learned from millions and millions of emails that some of those are spam and that you don't want them on your inbox, and others are, for example, recognized as normal mail because they come from addresses that you trust. Yeah. Or when you use Amazon and Amazon starts to suggest to you like a variety of different products, that's basically an AI algorithm learning your behavior, thus being able to recommend something to you that you might buy. So what we learn here is there is no one thing, one AI. There's not like the giant machine somewhere in the hidden universes of the internet that basically can do anything, everything. It's a variety of different concepts. Number two, in 2015, Pedro Domingos, an author, computer scientist, wrote a book called The Master Algorithm, in which he basically laid out 5 different tribes of AI models that exist out there. And he was basically looking if there is a possibility to create like one big AI master algorithm that can do everything. Yeah. He identified these tribes. Symbolism, which basically deals with like symbolic reasoning. Yeah. A lot of these concepts are they come from computer science, they come from neuroscience. Yeah. Then There is the connectionists or connectionism as an origin of a variety of different AI models. There is evolutionary algorithms. You might have heard before, for example, about genetic algorithms. This is part of that. There's the Bayesian algorithms that basically have to do with the repetition of repeatedly driving an algorithm through a calculation and thus having the ability to learn, and analogizers. So these are like the 5 big tribes. Remember that I mentioned just before that Amazon basically can learn from your order behavior and then basically suggest products that you might like. That's a Bayesian algorithm, for example. Yeah. I would also to point out that architects did not start yesterday using AI models. One famous example is Carl Chu, for example. He used already evolutionary algorithms, meaning genetic algorithms in the 90s. So there is a history to this. Yeah, it didn't start 2 years ago. But the most famous one that might be like the most best known to you is connectionism. Connectionism is based on what we understand in neuroscience about certain processes and behaviors in our brain. For example, we have a pretty good understanding of what happens when we're dreaming. And we have a pretty good understanding also what happens when we're hallucinating. So we're actually able to somehow translate these insights from neuroscience into mathematics. And once we can actually put them in math, we can create an algorithm out of it. Thus, we can create an AI, yeah, an artificial neural network. Yeah, our brain works. The way our brain works is that we have a neural network. We have like there's actually a number. I forgot the number. How many neurons we have in our, like generally speaking, in our brain. And then they're connected with each other with tendrils, and these tendrils basically transmit electricity, and that electricity creates things like memories, smells, sight, sound, and so on. And we are basically able to simulate that neural network and thus create similar things like seeing, smelling. I'm sure we can do that too with an AI, and a certain amount of reasoning. Yeah, but I would be very careful to talk about AI as something that can think. I don't think we can do that yet. Why cannot we do that? Because from the point of neuroscience, we still do not understand exactly how thinking works. Yeah. So as long as we don't understand scientifically from neuroscience how thinking works, we will not be able to simulate it synthetically with a neural network, thus creating it artificially. But we can throw so much computational power on certain aspects that it almost looks like thinking, or it almost looks like the machine would have reason, like complete reasoning, or an understanding of the world. Also, another term that I would be very careful about with AI is the term understanding. Yeah? I don't think AI can understand anything the way we humans understand things. Yeah, we talked about that briefly today morning with the problem of semantic information, and that if the semantic information is missing, that an AI model cannot really process what's happening. Yeah, humans have a completely different way of doing that, and that's exactly something that we do not understand completely in terms of neuroscience. Thus, we cannot make it artificial. Yeah, but neural networks, connectionist models have been highly successful in the last decades. They were completely dismissed, by the way, when they first came around. The invention basically goes back into the 1950s. Frank Rosenblatt, a neuroscientist turned computer scientist, came up with the idea of an artificial neural network. He was actually able to train that one to recognize, for example, the difference between women and men and day and night and stuff, like simple things. Very impressive, but the calculation power was not there to do anything more meaningful with it. Yeah, so that's why there was then the AI winter in the 1970s, where not a lot went on in terms of researching neural networks, and then it started to rise again late 90s, early 2000s with new discoveries, better machines, and more labeled data, because that was also one of the main issues it didn't work, was the data. Okay, let me keep going. Another question. So we briefly discussed now sort of like a little bit the technical background. We're going to go much deeper in all of those step by step, but so you just have an overview in the first lecture I give you here. The other big area that we need to discuss is the impact of AI on culture, right? So first we talked a little bit about there is no one single AI, it's a variety of different models doing different things. And we subsumize them under the name AI, but still there is this whole question of how does this impact human culture? And it's quite fascinating to see how it has exploded in the last 4 years. There were artists before already working with artificial intelligence. I want to point out on the upper left corner that's Sofia Crespo. She's an artist who basically started to program her own neural networks, collecting her own data sets of undersea creatures, and then creating this kind of strange, surreal, uncanny, estranged sea creatures. And then you have like the second from the lower row from the left, that's Mario Klingemann, another artist who basically also taught himself how to program, created his own neural networks, primarily generative adversarial networks, and based on that, he created this sort of uncanny, strange, bizarre, nightmare, surrealist imagery, which I really like. I think this is one of the most interesting AI artists out there. But it has also influenced other things like music, for example. There's bands like Dadabots, Holy Herndon. We're going to hear more about them throughout the semester, who were the first ones creating AI music. Unfortunately, it has become like a disease right now, this sort of generating AI music, because the interesting thing about AI would be if it creates something that we are not used to, that is different, that is surprising, that is culturally valuable. But right now, a lot is what is called slop. It's AI slop. It's things that are sort of imitating what humans like, thus being successful, but it is, I don't think, any success for the arts. It's actually a loss for the arts. But it's an ongoing debate. I'm curious what's going to come out of it. In my opinion, probably something similar to what we discussed today morning regarding the invention of the camera. So humans are going to come up with something that AI cannot do. And that's going to be like the new, really interesting art form. Then we have like this sort of, let's call it AI resistance. Yeah. You see on the upper line, the third image from the left, there is like a lot of people with this kind of strange makeups. This is so-called dazzle camouflage makeup. It's designed to confuse facial recognition systems. It's a form of cultural expression that at the same time is a resistance toward an emerging control society. Yeah? And of course, AI is the ultimate tool to control society. So these are things that really need to be discussed and learned and critically engaged with it, so that you as an architect have an overview of what it culturally means to use artificial intelligence in this context. We have deepfakes. We have a lot of literature that came out in recent years criticizing like what AI does. I think it's important also to read this. I'm not a techno evangelist. I'm not an AI evangelist. I'm a critically thinking architect who tries to understand how this technology is impacting us as architects and how we can use that in a productive way. Yeah. Don't forget to write down questions if you have any questions. Some of these books we're gonna read chapters of them. For example, the full automation one, the alignment problem, we're going to go into the intro. The Ways of Being by James Bridle, we're also going to read one chapter from that. Ruha Benjamin's Race of the Technology is one of the others we're going to read a chapter from. And I'd like also to give you access to my newest book that's coming out in August, that give you like an exclusive sneak preview, so to speak, of one or the other chapter. Curious about the response and the debates that we have around them. Well, then let's go more closer and say, how does AI affect architecture? We were talking now about, generally speaking, how it affects culture at large, but what does it mean for architecture specifically? Well, let's have a little look into a statistic that came out in 2023. This is a statistic that was actually done by Goldman Sachs in March 2023 that depicted a variety of different disciplines and the way that AI will affect them. And you see that from the very bottom is building, cleaning, maintenance, construction, production, like all of these jobs are less affected, which, by the way, it's very likely this statistic changed a little bit since 2023. But it's fairly similar. I saw it recently, an update. This is fairly similar. That, the red line, is architecture and engineering, the way that AI will affect that. Yeah, and we also have numbers for that. And in total, it means that around 300 million jobs around the world will be affected by AI. So what does it mean? It means for the architects that 37% of the jobs in architecture will change in the next 10 years due to the impact of AI. I want to point out specifically that this does not mean those jobs are lost. It does not mean those jobs disappear. It just means that it changes because of an emergent technology. We had this before already in architecture, and architects are actually quite good in absorbing technical change, right? I mean, when I started studying, I still was also drawing by hand with ink and Mylar, yeah? And then the computer came along, changed everything. No one today uses ink and Mylar. I mean, that would be like a total luxury to do that. It becomes the standard. It's the new normal. And the same happens also with AI. So how can it shape the discourse, like the intellectual part of being an architect, not just the technical part? In the recent years, I have tried with a group of friends to discuss, interrogate, explore, examine how AI is changing how we design. And this was a combination between books, exhibitions, symposia, all things that are necessary, like all the building blocks necessary to create a specific discourse around an emerging technology. Among them, for example, one is the Neural Architecture Exhibition Symposium in 2022, which was one of the first AI architecture exhibitions out there, if not the first about architecture and AI specifically. And this was really about putting together a set of different architects, designers, theorists, to discuss what's the impact in terms of culture, aesthetics, ethics of that. But on the other hand, we also did another symposium called Data, Justice, AI, and Design, which was specifically designed to discuss rather these parts of data harvesting, data ethics, biases, like all the problems that come along with AI. So it's like these two sides of a medal. On the one side, you have really interesting aesthetical challenges that changes how we design architecture, and it also even changes how architecture looks like. Yeah? And then on the other side, you have all these sort of ethical implications that come along with using data from that is not your data, it's other people's data, that creates biases because of the way you set the weights in your AI models, that goes into things like racial biases, gender biases, and so on. Yeah, age bias, also that exists. Yeah, so there's a lot of these very negatively human elements that, of course, influence the results in an AI. I'll give you like a very quick example. I think we're going to discuss this more deeply another time. In the United States, there was basically a case of an AI model that was trained to help decide parole cases, meaning if somebody is in jail, he can apply to be released earlier if he was behaving well. And they used an AI model to make the decision whether to give this person parole or not. Res Publica, an online magazine, did a research on whether this AI model is biased and figured out that model was literally racist. It was basically doing decisions many, many times a better decision for white people than people of color. So he left the people of color in jail and got the white people out. They started to explore why this happened and figured out that the person who labeled the data set that was used in Compass was unintentionally racist. Yes, that can happen. He was not aware that he's racist, but he was racist.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Sorry, I just wanted to, because you mentioned this case of human bias, deep human biases, subconscious biases affecting AI models.
Yes.
In 2020, right after the first lockdown, the Museum Scotia had a good shine for movies, and there was a documentary called Coded Bias by
Yeah.
a African American scholar, and she said how facial recognition softwares in airports and immigration scan out Mexicans or black people or even brown people consistently more because they feel that, oh, this person looks more threatening. And those models haven't changed since. I mean, no one repaired. Just a factoid,
Yeah,
really.
I think there was Pulavimi. Mimi, wait a second. Pulavimi. She's a researcher, Joy Pulavimi. She's a researcher at MIT, and she does these movies. She's also an artist at the same time, and she wrote a book called Unmasking AI, which describes all these problems. Yes. All right, let me keep going. Thank you very much. Thank you. So in more detail, how does artificial intelligence impact the AEC industry, architecture, engineering, and construction? So really from the more pragmatic point of view. Yeah. Let's see. I have an example for this. Imagine the life cycle of a building. Yeah. And we're going to divide that into 6 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we start with things that we are commonly using when we do architecture. So for example, if you imagine the life cycle of a building, it starts with the preliminary design. Then we go into the design phase. After that, we go into the planning phase. After that, we go into the construction phase of the building. Then during its lifetime, we have to maintain it. And then at the end, we have to demolish it. Yeah, so this is sort of like the commonly accepted way of a life cycle of a building. Let's see what happens if we start to apply artificial intelligence to each one of those elements. We have prompting instead of sketching a preliminary design. We can do fast iterations in the design process to decide a really good design we want to continue doing. When we decided about that, we can actually use generative planning to create the plans and sections and elevations of this design. In the construction phase, we can use, for example, safety, generative models for safety, meaning we can check, is the construction site safe? Or we can check, do we have all the materials we need at the day? So really control the logistics of the construction site using AI, optimizing that, avoiding delays, which are always a big problem in regards of maintaining a budget of a building, right? Then during the lifetime of the building, we can use augmented reality and an AI model to train people how to maintain the building properly or to help in emergency cases. And then at the end, we can use machine vision to sort the demolition material so that we can recycle it much better. So you see, for every one of the things, every one of those common steps in architecture, we can already use an existing AI model. All of this is not science fiction. All of those things already exist out there. Yeah. Unfortunately, or well, I would like to say that the fact is that architects and students most of the time only see the first 2, the prompting and fast iteration part, but rather leave the others out, at least for the moment, because they're a little bit more difficult to achieve. But a warning that I always tell all students is that if we do not engage with AI, somebody else will do it for us. Meaning that construction companies, investors, yeah, they will take over the planning process if they can really handle the automation completely on their own. That is why architects have to engage with this topic aggressively in order to maintain the leadership. Because if we do not really use it fully, I'm totally sure those companies will take that part over. So why do we need to demystify artificial intelligence in architecture? Well, I basically give already a little bit of the answer already before. We have to engage with it because otherwise others will do it for us. But also it's to understand better the opportunities that AI shows us. Right now, people see like the top here, ChatGPT, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, BART, and other easily available models. But under the surface, we have like a ton of different AI models, variational autoencoders, energy-based models, TreeGAN, NERSC, GraphCNNs, YOLO, feature detection, 3D GAN, etc., which are enormously useful in terms of what we can do to optimize and predict certain things that come with an architectural project. And they're all based on the very big bottom here, which is the data sets. Data sets is something that is still in architecture a little bit problematic because we do not have actually a lot of data sets in architecture. And this has to do with the fact that traditionally architects are very protective about their IP. So they think if they basically provide you with a data set, that they're basically giving away for free their details or their plans or their strategies or whatever. Yeah. With my new company, I'm actually trying to change that. I took an example from medicine, how to change that. In medicine, for example, universities around the world can basically train on a variety of different data sets that come from medicine without having actual insight into individual files of the data set. That is important in medicine to protect, of course, the privacy of the people who were affected by this sickness or accident or whatever it is. So I developed a model that allows architects to train their AI models on a ton of data without having the insight into individual files. So they cannot copy anything from any other architecture office. The more like theoretical, philosophical part of this new ecology, which I think is quite interesting, is this idea of the latent space, estrangement, and inference. So the latent space basically is a three-dimensional space that describes a variety of different vectors that are present within a data set of, I don't know, whatever you're collecting there in the data set. And the interesting part is that you can navigate within that data, in this three-dimensional space in a variety of different ways too. You can, for example, try to find a robust solution. So let's say you have a data set of brutalist buildings from the 1950s and 1960s, and basically you want to generate a new design in that style. So you can basically train it with a robust curve fitting, and you will get something out of it which looks very convincingly like a brutalist design from the 60s, yeah? But it's not in the data set. So it's kind of new, yeah, which is great for some people. For others, for me, for example, I think it's much more interesting to go under fitting. So the curve is not like optimizing towards specifically looking like a brutalist building, but sort of hallucinating how a brutalist building could look like. And these are things where I get interested in because it's familiar enough to be recognized as a brutalist building, but strange enough to attract attention. And this, our business is an attraction-driven business, if you ask me. And so right now, and then the other one is overfitting. And overfitting is something you really want to avoid because when you overfit within a latent space, what happens is that you're going to get a copy of something that is already in the data set. So it doesn't help you at all. That's quickly for the latent space. Estrangement and inference is definitely that a little bit what I tried to describe before. So this is, for example, good examples of estrangement. You as an architect, and many of you I think are Austrians, you probably can recognize in these images somehow alpine house features. Yeah. There's some wood here, there's some white frames here, there's pitched roofs, there's this kind of greenery that is familiar to you from the alpine environment. So you can recognize those features and you can assume your mind is going to put those pieces together to think like, this possibly is a building. Yeah? It's a strange building, something that is not very common, but it's still a building. And it somehow complies to some stylistic features of alpine houses, the kind of windows, doors, for example, the lower block of the building in white versus the upper block of the building being cladded in wood and then having like a pitched roof on top of that. So we see those features, but they're estranged. They're familiar, but not clearly recognizable. And I think that feature, that possibility given by these AI models, this hallucinating of strange features, is a very exciting environment for finding unexpected, different, exciting new architectural possibilities. Yeah, but in order to be able to appreciate that, you have to let go. You have to let go from your full control. You have to forget that you have everything under control. I know this is basically how we're educated as architects. We have to have everything 100% under control. This control in the design process of AI comes later. At the beginning, you let go so you can find something that is different. And once you have something that is interesting, you can regain the control in terms of construction, structure, calculations, cost estimates, etc. Very briefly, because we're also going to go into more detail later with this, how do these AI models, how do diffusion models, how do these image generators create images at all? What happens here is that first you have the data in the data set, and it's get basically scrambled in a mixer until you have only random noise. And then once you have the random noise, there's something called a Markov chain and denoising. And the denoising process takes cues from your prompt in order to provide to you what you're looking for. So for example, in this case, one of the images in the data set was the Villa Savoye, completely destroyed, destructured, yeah, into noise. And then it goes back into becoming an image through denoising process. Yeah. So basically, Midjourney, DALL-E, ChatGPT, image generation, everything that has to do with diffusion models to create images is based on this concept. So what it does is basically it goes bloop, random noise, and then from the random noise it builds an image. Yeah. Okay. This is like a little depiction of the Latin space I was talking before. So you have three coordinates, x, y, z. You have a space, Cartesian space. And in this Cartesian space, you have a distribution of data points, which you can organize them by a variety of different criteria. Does this building have doors? Does this building have a pitched roof or a flat roof? Is this building white or black? Is this building old or new? And according to that, it will be distributed within that space in a variety of different areas. And depending on how you're prompting it, it creates vectors of potential solutions, of the probability of solving something. Yeah? This probability calculation is that then leads to your result, no matter if it is an image or if it is a plan. Yeah, this is the basis is whatever happens within that latent space. I have to say that it seems that there is a difference between, for example, generative adversarial networks who definitely used latent space, or CNNs who also use latent space, and then the newer models like diffusion models and transformers, they seem to be using this a little bit different. I talked about estrangement before, like this moment where something looks familiar enough to be recognized, but strange enough to be interesting or attractive or create attention in you. The term for that is defamiliarization. Yeah. By the way, this is not a term that I invented, but I think I'm going to talk about this in a second again. In a way, what you see here is a good example for that. On the left side, this is a latent walk through a data set of brutalist images of brutalist buildings, right? And you, as an architect, you can recognize that. You see like these window bands, you see something cantilevering. It has this sort of grayish color of concrete, which is like a typical feature of brutalist buildings, but it's not like a copy of an existing brutalist building. So I could use a freeze frame of this and probably base a whole project on that. On the right side, this is an interesting phenomenon. It's the same data set. It's the same data set, but I decided to pollute the data set, make it dirty. Yeah. the data set on the left are all just images of brutalist buildings. The image or a video on the right has those brutalist buildings plus a handful of Picasso paintings. And suddenly, when you know it's a Picasso painting, you start to see those features too. You start to see like the strange Picasso eyes and colors and lines. So there's like a certain familiarity to it again. Yeah. But this is exactly this moment of estrangement, this moment of defamiliarization that basically attracts the attention to the viewer, to this here. All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can we then say that AI at least partially understands what we want from it? I mean, I get that we prompt it, but how does it connect the everything, like the pictures and words and?
Most of the time, this is based on probability. So no, I don't think it understands anything. It just provides you like a highly probable solution to what you're looking for based on the data that it has. Yeah. So for example, if this model here, that what you see here, this result here had no prompting whatsoever. Yeah. There was no prompting. It was just a data set and a generative adversarial network. And what that generative adversarial network does is basically it generates images and it compares it to the images in the data set to see if they're close enough to be realistic or not. Yeah. And then it makes an output. So there's no prompting here at all. Yeah. In this case, this task was very clear. Here is a data set of brutalist buildings, generate more brutalist buildings. And also a big role in this plays the training. How long do you train the model? So for example, for this example, we trained the model intentionally too short. Yeah. Because I know, or we know in the lab, we knew if we train the model shorter, it doesn't learn all the features perfectly. So it's going to create something that approximates the shapes he was learning. And this approximation is strange. And that's exactly what I wanted. Yeah. So no, it doesn't understand anything. It's all mathematics. It's all statistic, mathematics, probabilities. Like, for example, ChatGPT. The only thing that ChatGPT does, it doesn't understand. It understands nothing of what you're saying to it. The only thing it does is calculate the highest probability for the next word in a sentence that it spits out back to you. That's all it does. Yeah. But it sounds very convincing. That's for sure.
Okay.
All right. Let's keep going. Classification and violence. This is another big ethical topic. You know that when you're labeling images, you're classifying. Yeah. You're basically saying, like, for example, sometimes you have to, this is a good building, this is a bad building, this is a good tree, this is a bad tree, this is a healthy tree, this is a sick tree, and so on. Yeah. But the thing is also that not only what you're labeling, it's also in which language are you labeling. Yeah. For example, this graphic here, what's going on here? Yeah, this graphic here shows the distribution of languages within ChatGPT. Yeah. And it shows you that the biggest, by far the biggest annotated data set comes from the United States. Then comes Canada, UK. Yeah, meaning language is dominating this model profoundly. Yeah. Then comes the second largest language, funny enough. Well, it's not funny, it's pretty much understandable, is Chinese. Yeah. But what does it mean? It means that all the sort of cultural individual elements that makes a culture recognizable are mostly ignored in ChatGPT. Yeah. Like the way how different languages convey the same word in a different way and sometimes has more than one meaning. Yeah. These things start to disappear with large language models like ChatGPT that do not have the semantic understanding that language has also some very interesting quirks that makes it locally understandable, for example. But what is very surprising to me and interesting about a model like ChatGPT is that it can emulate humor, which is kind of interesting. I remember A couple of years ago, I was here in Vienna at the OFI, the Austrian Institute of Artificial Intelligence, and there was somebody there desperately trying to make an AI model make jokes, and it didn't work. Yeah, AIs didn't have humor. Now it seems to work, and I think it has to do with what I explained before, probability. So he can compare like a million jokes online and understand the structure, analyze the structure that such a joke has, and then calculate the highest probability of a combination of words that will result in a joke. So it's not that the machine has humor, it just understands or can analyze the structure of humor. Does it make sense? Anybody?
Yeah.
Is it going too
Yeah.
fast? Maybe a quick question in between. Is this too fast for you? Anybody?
No, it's fine.
I think it's
Okay.
okay.
I'm gonna try to slow
No, it's
down a
fine.
little bit, yeah, because it's a lot of information in short time. I know. All right. One of the people who also pointed out another interesting aspect of artificial intelligence is Kate Crawford. Kate Crawford wrote this book called Atlas of AI in 2021, and her main direction in the book is to analyze that AI does not consist of some mysterious computers in the cloud that don't have a body. Actually, it's necessary to mine a variety of different minerals to be able to create a GPU, for example, or hard drives or data centers. And then once you're running these places, which are basically built of materials that exist and are real, and most of the time also mined in countries that are rather poor, they have to also build the data centers. And there's examples already out there of data centers being so big, so heavy, and so energy consuming that they literally change the landscape around them, lowering the water table, for example, of entire regions. So it's more difficult for people to pump up drinking water. Of course, it changes the ecology entirely if you start to heat up water on a level that is just really, really big. The latest in this, it's not in the book, it's not in the Atlas of AI, but one of the things I recently gathered, and maybe some of you heard it too, is that the United States is considering giving companies like Meta and X and OpenAI the permission to run their own nuclear plants to generate the necessary energy to run the AI models. So I consider that a step back, not a step further forward. Okay. So in order to break that sort of cycle, we must rethink training itself. Yeah. So data sets must be expanded not only for diversity in appearance, but for conceptual shift. This whole idea of introducing, for example, noise or dirt into a data set to provoke it to do different things is an interesting possibility. This year, for example, is a data set of mid-century modern facades. This is during the training. It looks like this. I mean, there's one thing I have to say about the enormous hunger for data in contemporary AI models, which is that this could change any minute. Yeah. Just consider, for example, how children learn what a dog is. Yeah. They can fairly quickly learn that's a dog. But more surprisingly for me is that they not only learn very quickly that's a dog, they also very quickly learn that a Chihuahua and a Doberman are both dogs. Yeah. For machines, this is much more difficult to achieve. So this has to do with two things. Like number one, we do not know from a neuroscience point why it is possible for our mind to process these enormous amounts of data with a rather small amount of energy. Yeah. If once we understand how we can process data in our mind using that little amount of energy, we might hopefully solve the problem of how to use AI without killing our planet. The other thing is also, again, you do not have to show a child 10,000 dogs so that it understands that's a dog, right? It seems like it's rather capable to grasp from a very small amount of data that this is a dog. We will hear during the semester a couple of times about different methods, different ways of machines, of how machines learn things. Yeah, unsupervised, supervised, reinforcement learning, zero-shot learning, and so on. We're gonna hear about that more later. I was talking already before about the latent space, and I think this is one of the lessons that you should take away from this Sondermodul is that you are basically navigating that latent space, looking for aspects, ideas, solutions that might improve your design agenda. Yeah. For one, for example, that navigation and the way how you start to manipulate that navigation is what can produce very interesting ideas. But I also would warn you immediately to think that it can create anything really, really new, because it's very unlikely that AI is able to do that. And here's why. We were talking a lot about data sets and data now in the last hours, also before in the morning. You have to think about that, the fact that AI operates only with existing data. So what it does is it basically interpolates between those data points and can show us, things, solutions, ideas, concepts that we did not see before. They were there. They were within the latent space, but we were not able to see them. I like to compare sometimes AI to something like a telescope or a microscope. So, for example, the craters on the moon, most of them were already there when Galileo looked through a telescope and figured out, hey, the moon is not like a flat, nice marble. It's actually full of ridges and craters, and it's not perfect. So this telescope showed Galileo something that was there, but was not visible for him. It's same thing also with the microscope. Yeah, showing us microbes. The microbes were there. We were just not able to see them. And because you can see them now, we can do scientific deductions of what it means. And with AI, I think it's a similar problem. We have existing data. There's like things happening between those data points that we are just not able to see them, despite the fact that they were there. So we as architects have to navigate that latent space to find, mine, discover, and use these discoveries. For example, in this case, it's very clear that the data set was historical architecture from Vienna. Yeah? That I intentionally created a model that was very bad in basically putting those pieces clearly together and hallucinated a lot. But that was an intentional artistic decision. I did that decision as a designer. Yeah. So it was my decision as a human to do this, not an AI's. I am the one who can interpret this then when it's done and say, oh, yes, I'm interested in this. This is different. This is weird. It's kind of historical architecture, but it's not modern, but it's not antique either. It's not destroyed. It's somehow strangely put together. Can I take this, interpret this, and make it a project? Yeah. You saw already before that the model, the 3D model, the sort of interrogation of historical data in the middle. So this is basically the carcery by Piranesi, reinterpreted with a gun through a latent walk. And then at the end, I actually created a 3D model like the one that you see at the very left with pixel projection, but then used a variety of different AI models to give it like a more realistic material quality that I can again use for further designing. So one thing you should know is that it's very useful to combine different AI models with each other to do something. Yeah, it's not all just one model. You just combine them together. It's again this sort of concatenation, this chaining together of a variety of different models to achieve your design. Okay, I would suggest 5 minutes break, and then I would like to have a round of questions. Is that okay for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
Great. So let's do a little break and then we continue. Okay, everybody. This is just a short break. There's one more thing I need to quickly tell you that I have to go to the Studienkommission, and they wanted to talk about this Sondermodul with me again. So we will have to end a little bit earlier. Um, the first thing I would like to do now is like a sort of short Q&A, questions and answers. Please feel free to ask anything. If there's things you did not understand or that were too fast or that you want me to repeat, please go ahead.
I have a question
Yes.
about hallucinations.
Mhm.
So you said that AI can't create, it just uses the existing information and just combines it in different ways.
Yes.
Uh, aren't we doing the same when are we not taking the information that already exists and we combine it in our heads in ways that isn't that the same thing? Or no?
I know what you're trying to go to. Let me explain it like this. There is two different things. One is interpolation, and the other one is extrapolation. Yeah.
Yes.
Interpolation, for example, is if you have two known data points, yeah, and you interpolate between the two, you will come up with something. Yeah. Imagine, for example, the transformation from, I don't know, a bottle to a screwdriver. Yeah. You know that there is like software out there from Illustrator to Maya and others that can basically transform one object into another, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, and you have like these different steps going on in between while this transformation is going on. Yeah. And
Yes.
this is basically an interpolation between these two things. And there will be things happening that are interesting while this process is going. But that's an interpolation. Yeah. Extrapolation is something that is profoundly human. For example, I'll give you a good example. You can take any book. Yeah. You take any book
Mm-hmm.
and you cover like half of it, half of the title, for example, and you as a human still going to be able to read the title, right?
Yes.
That's because you're extrapolating the rest of the information. You're like projecting what this rest could mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is something that is profoundly difficult for machines. So they can interpolate really well, but extrapolation, which also leads to new ideas and new things and so new concepts, it's very difficult for machines, if not impossible. Right. So that's why I'm saying that they cannot really create anything new. It
Mm-hmm.
might look new to me. Like, for example, if I really make this sort of transformation between a bottle and a screwdriver, and suddenly an interesting aesthetic shade comes out of that for a bottle, I'm going to use that. It looks great. I'll take it. But it's also, by the way, the human intuition, the human talent, the human really understanding that this could be interesting that makes it a valuable object. For AI, it doesn't matter what it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll give you another example. Um, so AIs basically, like AIs do only two things all the time. One is optimization, and the other one is prediction. That's all they do. They do. Any AI model does that. So let's assume, for example, that you really trained your model very, very low or very slow, very, very short, and because of that, it's hallucinating like crazy. Yeah. And for an AI model, that's actually a bad situation to be in because it wants to optimize. It wants to like give you the best possible outcome for whatever you're searching for. Yeah. But it is a very, very human ability to recognize in that hallucination, in that mistake that the machine makes, something that has value, that is aesthetically interesting, practically interesting. It's an alternative way of thinking about an idea and so on. Yeah. So specifically for creative environments like being architects, that's a very valuable thing to have. For other environments, it's a disaster. Like, for example, the last thing you want is that a car starts to hallucinate boulders on the highway. Yeah, that's a
Yes.
problem. Yeah, but for us architects, if that machine, that same problem is applied to, I don't know, trying to create a building in a populated area with a lot of other buildings, and suddenly something comes out that is like super fascinating. You're like, yes, I want to use that. That's really cool. Yeah. But that's a very human decision. It's a very human decision. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes.
Yes?
I think I do.
Does it make sense? I mean, we're going to hear more of that anyways, yeah, throughout the semester. But
But thanks.
yeah, happy to answer. Any other one? Anyone else?
I would have a follow-up question to
Yes.
this topic. Could the model then potentially also be trained to recognize what is aesthetically pleasing or not, just like
Yes.
we do?
Yes, you can do that. And I've done it already. So for example, I can tell you exactly how to do that. Normally, when you are labeling things, yeah, we did an experiment a couple of years ago, and the experiment was, can we create an AI model that can create the same kind of stylistic features like my own designs? Can it reproduce my designs? Can it create designs like me? Yeah. And in order to make that experiment, this was, by the way, the first year of COVID, 2020. I spent the whole summer of 2020 3D modeling models the way I would do them. Yeah, not very complicated, small models, but 3D models. And I created around 2,000 models on my own. Yeah, and then we put all of them into an Excel sheet, meaning I could, I don't know exactly how Alexa did that, but I could actually, in the Excel sheet, look at this model and rotate it. Yeah. And then I could apply to that a variety of different criteria. So I could actually say it's aesthetically pleasing or it's not pleasing. Yeah, for example, was one of the criteria. There were several others. Is it functional? Is it functional? Is it not functional? Can we use it as a design or can we not use it as a design? So there were like a variety of different criteria that were labeled in the dataset, so that a machine learning process can learn what is aesthetically pleasing for me and what is not aesthetically pleasing for me. And then based on that, we trained a model to create new models. And the results was pretty convincing. So it actually could recreate my aesthetical ambitions or what I like, yeah, and create more models. Yes, so we can train a model to understand aesthetical criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I think for me, questions will appear once I visit all the points, and then I'm like, yeah, nothing
Sorry,
comes
can
up
you
right
come closer
now.
to the microphone? I think you're too far
Sorry.
away. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I meant I think I'll have questions once I revisit all the slides that you presented today and the notes. Nothing comes off right now because it's too much data to process.
Yes. So I wanted to tell you also, I need to end today a little bit earlier because I have to go to the Studienkommission and talk about this Sondermodul, and they gave me like a specific time to go. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wait until the Zoom finishes everything, and then I'm gonna upload that to my YouTube channel and send you the link. Okay, so you can rewatch this. All right?
That'll be great. Thanks.
Okay. Any final questions? Anyone?
I have a question. What again is the Latin space?
Can you come closer to the microphone? I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Very badly.
Wait. Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to ask what again is the latent space?
Yes. So the latent space, you have to imagine it like this. You're collecting data, right? Data points. And the data points are being organized in that space in three dimensions. Yeah. According to criteria. As I was saying, like, is this a blue car? Is it a yellow car? Is it a white car? And because of that, they're in different parts of that latent space. Yeah. And so the latent space allows you to process this data in a way that it has like a variety of different, or theoretically actually endless amounts of vectors, meaning these solutions can go in a variety of different directions depending on what you're asking this model to solve. You can imagine that as a three-dimensional space where data lives. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's of course different for different kinds of data, but data lives in that space. And depending on how you navigate through that space, yeah, are you gonna get closer to the red cars or are you gonna get closer to the yellow cars? Yeah, you can basically generate the result. I want to generate a yellow car, thus my line is gonna be closer to the yellow cars. Yeah, does it
Mhm.
make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. We're gonna hear this several times over the semester. Don't worry.
Yeah.
This is a very important topic, and I know it's not so easy to grasp the first time around, but we're gonna get there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? One more thing. On Thursday, one of the first things we have to do is create a WhatsApp group. WhatsApp group has turned out to be one of the best communication tools between like all the students from a seminar and me, because I answer for sure faster to a WhatsApp message than to an email. I can tell you that immediately. Yeah. So we're gonna do the WhatsApp group on Thursday, and we're gonna continue on Thursday. Any questions, organizational or otherwise?
I already made a WhatsApp group. So
Ah,
there's
okay,
also
great.
already an existing one.
Yes. Is this the same one from last semester or what?
No. But I posted it in Studio and some of the other colleagues already joined.
Okay, good, good. All right. Can you share this with me somehow?
I think Paola already sent the link.
All right, good. Okay. But yeah, we'll figure it out. Okay. Thank you very much for that. This is super helpful. Who did this? Who did the WhatsApp group?
I made it. Sophia.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, so much for that now. We're finished for today, I think. So if there's no further questions, wait, there's something in the chat. Got it. All right. Good. Let me just copy that quickly so that I have it.
Thank you once again, and good luck with the Commission presentation.
Yes, everybody, good luck. See you soon. Again, please just think about questions. If you have anything to ask, just reach out. You can reach out to me also before we meet on Thursday. I'm pretty much accessible whenever you have questions. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
All
you.
right. Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.